Hello students, good morning. Welcome to the subject of environmental science. We are dealing with unit number 1, environment part A, right? And we are dealing with the part 9 of the unit number 1A part, A section rather. These are the contents that we have seen up till now in unit number 1 part A, right? We have also done with the concept of ecology and ecosystem in the previous lectures, and we have taken up with the types of ecosystem, which are mainly divided into two parts, that is terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. In the last session, that is part 8, the terrestrial ecosystem has been explained. Terrestrial is nothing but the ecosystem that persists on land, and aquatic ecosystem is the ecosystem that, or the world, or the creatures that are involved, living, non-living things that are involved in the water, right? That consists of aquatic ecosystem. In this session, we'll be studying in detail about the aquatic ecosystem. All right, let us check out with the aquatic ecosystem. As I told you, aquatic is nothing but the water ecosystem, right? So let us see what it is first of all, right? What it includes, and then its uses, and what precautions we may take to protect the water ecosystem. Let us first try to introduce ourselves to the aquatic water ecosystem. An aquatic ecosystem is an ecosystem in a body of water. The name itself tells us. Communities of organisms that are dependent on each other and on their environment live in aquatic ecosystem. That means all those organisms who are dependent on itself also and on others. They depend on others and they create the food web within the water. That those all creatures and the environment is considered as aquatic ecosystem. It consists of environment of the sea, lakes, river, ponds and wetlands. That means all these can be considered, all those water bodies can be considered as a part of aquatic ecosystem, like sea, lakes, rivers, ponds and wetlands. It is important source of natural resource like fish, oil, fresh water, salt, pearls, crustaceans, that means types of aquatic animals, etc. We get it from these aquatic ecosystems. So it is very important source. It is a natural source through which we get all these. It may be fish, oil, maybe fresh water, salts, types of minerals, pearls, many other aquatic sea animals or aquatic animals also we get it from such a kind of aquatic ecosystem. It includes all the plants and animals living in the water. That means whatever the plants we get to see it in the water, it is included as, it is a part of ecosystem. The animals that live in under the water, that also is included as a part of ecosystem. And the physical attributes of all these species living in the water highly depends on the water flow, quality of water, level of oxygen, clarity of water, etc. That means those or whatever the species that live under or in this aquatic ecosystem, what happens is their physical attributes, or maybe the built up, or maybe their own way of living and their lifestyle highly depends upon the water flow, what type of water flow it requires and in what it can survive. In the quality of water, it depends on the level of oxygen that is available. On that it is depend on the clarity of water as well. So on these types, the whole ecosystem is dependent, or the species are dependent in the aquatic or in the water system. Let us go to the detailed study of aquatic water system. Aquatic water system can be divided into two parts, that is marine ecosystem and the freshwater ecosystem. Now marine means sea, right? And freshwater means, the name itself tells you that where the flow of water is fresh enough, right? So marine means it is always sea, and the basic understanding about sea water is it is salty in nature. That is how we divide, whereas fresh water contains less amount of salt, right? The running water contains less amount of salt, and that is why these mainly two bifurcation of this aquatic ecosystem can be there. Like in terrestrial, we have seen the forest, the grasslands, desert area, right? Same way, in the aquatic also we can divide it into two parts, that is said to be marine ecosystem and freshwater ecosystem. Now, what is this marine ecosystem? We'll study it in detail and then we focus on freshwater ecosystem, right? Okay, talk about, or if we try to understand the marine ecosystem, then we start from the beginning and then we proceed further. Marine ecosystem is the largest of all the ecosystem, because we know that maximum portion of the earth is covered by water, and that too with the marine water is the basic consistent or basic ingredient of the whole earth surface, right? It covers approximately 71% of earth surface and contains approximately 97% of planet's water. That means 71% of the earth surface is covered with the sea water, that is marine water. That means everywhere 71% is consisting of marine water, right? Whereas 97% of the total water that is available on the earth is in this marine ecosystem, or is consisting of this water. They are distinguished from freshwater ecosystem by the presence of dissolved compounds, especially salts in the water. We know this very well. I gave you the example earlier also, that how we can define or how we can just try to understand marine water system. Marine water system and its basic characteristic is the presence of compounds. Presence of compounds, like especially the salt compound is present in a greater quantity as compared to freshwater, and that what makes it a marine ecosystem. Approximately 85% of the dissolved material in seawater are sodium and chlorine. That means maximum 85% of the water consistent or the water element is of the salt, that means the sodium, and it is consisting of chlorine, and that what makes it a very specific or very special type of marine ecosystem, right, consisting of these material known as sodium and chlorine. Actually, salinity means the amount of dissolved salt that are present in the water. The water and salt cannot be separated as far as marine water system is concerned. Why so? Because of the salinity. Salinity tells us what? It is the dissolved salt in the water. That means the salt proportion or the salt particles that are dissolved in the water makes it saline. Differ from among the different marine ecosystem. That means actual salinity means amount of salt present in the marine water also differs. Suppose Indian Ocean may be having more salinity as compared to Arabian Ocean, right? Or Arabian Ocean may be having more salinity than Pacific Ocean. That means from different marine system to different the other marine system, the salinity, that means water content or salt content in the water can differ. It cannot be the similar one, right? But what we need to understand is marine ecosystem is anything that is consisting of sea water or the oceans. Different ecosystem may be found here, as the coastal sea is shallow and it becomes deep as we go further. We know this, that the many ecosystems or maybe different ecosystem depending upon the depth of the sea water also can be found. Few animals or few plants are such which get growing or which get its survival in the shallow water, whereas the other compounds are, or maybe other plants or animals are such which get the survival in the deep water. So the different ecosystem may be there in a single sea system. That also is the point that we need to understand. Fish, crustacean, starfish, jellyfish, microscopic algae and large seaweeds are the major group of marine ecosystem. You must have noticed these animals or these creatures in Discovery Channel, or if you are fond of watching Geography Channel, then you must have watched this under the marine ecosystem, that these type of creatures live in this ecosystem, right? Again, marine ecosystem is a basic life support for the nearby human community. Also, it is not only that only these creatures can live in the marine ecosystem, but it is a life supporting system for the communities who live on the beaches or maybe nearby the coastal area. They also get their livelihood from this marine ecosystem. Fish is the major contribution of sea, but the usage of big nets and advanced boats boats, it has created growth of fish in the, that means it has created less growth of fish in the Indian Ocean. It has created lot many problems. It is just the example that has been used here, that fish is the major contribution in the marine ecosystem or in the sea, but due to human activities like spreading the big nets, or maybe because of the advanced boats that may be running in the marine system or maybe on the sea, what happens because of that, many fishes have turned up or has gone extinct or finds difficult to survive. But anyways, what we need to understand here is marine ecosystem is such an ecosystem, it's a part of aquatic ecosystem. What is its main characteristic? It is saline in nature, that means the water is saline in nature. 97% of the total water present on the earth is is consisting of this marine ecosystem, right? Because marine ecosystem is concerned with salinity, that means the amount of salt present in the water, it differs from one ocean to the another one. One sea may be having a lot more salinity as compared to the other oceans, that may be possible, right? So that depends upon the amount of salt present. Again, so many creatures find their survival in such a kind of ecosystem, and that is why they have their own attributes, they have their own physical characteristics depending upon the type of water in which they live. It also includes the underwater plants, right? So this is what makes the marine ecosystem. Now we are talking about the next ecosystem that is considered to be freshwater ecosystem. Now what is freshwater ecosystem? Freshwater ecosystem covers almost 0.80% of Earth's surface, and 0.009 of its total water has the habitation. Means if you just try to focus here, not from the subjective point of view but from the practical point of view, then we can realize that 97%, in the very initial lectures I have told you that whatever the amount of water that we are using is only 3% that is available on the earth, which is in its pure form, and we can use it for our habitation and for the habitation of the animals and plants on the earth, because the rest of the water is 97% of the water is saline in nature, which cannot be directly used for any human activities or maybe for any other purposes. That means only 3%, and out of 3%, 0.80% is only fresh water, right? If you remember, 1% or 2% is already held in the glaciers. It is in the form of glaciers and snow. That means it is not in the, it is in a pure form, but it is in a solid form, and that cannot be used again by the people on the earth. That is why it's only that earth's, and 0.09% of its total water has its habitation. That means we live in a very small quantity of fresh water that is actually available to us for our survival, right? So the habitation who lives or which lives on the earth, that needs to focus on not wasting the fresh water or pure water, because it is very much less available in the nature. Freshwater ecosystem contains 41% of world's known fish species. That means fish species that are available, that out of that 100%, 41% is available in the freshwater. Now only freshwater is not going to make us learn about the fresh ecosystem. It has got its own bifurcation. That means even the freshwater can be subdivided. It is in the form of lentic, it is in the form of lotic, and the third one is wetlands. Now what is this lentic, lotic and wetlands? We will study it with an example so that the things are clear to us, right? And when we are talking about lentic type of freshwater ecosystem, they have stagnant or slow moving water, for example lakes, pools and ponds. And we will be studying the pond ecosystem in detail. That means lentic is such a kind of ecosystem which has got stagnant or very slow moving water. Stagnant means sthir, right? જેમાં બહુ હલનચલન નથી હોતી. In short, it is not flowing water. રાઈટ, ફ્લોઈંગ વોટરની ખાસિયત શું હોય કે એક જગ્યાએથી બીજી જગ્યાએ પાણી તરત જ ટ્રાવેલ કરે છે. હિયર વોટ હેપન્સ ઇઝ ઇટ ઇઝ સ્ટેગ્નન્ટ, મોર ઓર લેસ સ્ટેગ્નન્ટ. સ્ટેગ્નન્ટ એટલે સ્થિર હોય છે. તો એવા ફ્રેશ વોટરના આપણે એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ કયા કયા આપી શકીએ? તો દેટ ઇઝ લેક્સ, pools એન્ડ ponds, right? So here to understand this fresh water system or fresh ecosystem, and that too lentic in nature. Lentic ની સાથે શું યાદ રાખવાનું? That is stagnant, the water where the or the water bodies in which the water is almost stagnant. Stagnant એટલે સ્થિર પાણી ક્યાં જોવા મળે? It is generally seen in lakes, pools or maybe ponds. It has its own habitation, it has its own say usage, and it has its own characteristic that we will study in the further part. Then comes up is lotic. This have faster moving water, for example springs, streams and rivers, and we will study streams and rivers in details. That means lotic ની ખાસિયત શું છે? What is lotic freshwater ecosystem? It consists of flowing water. Flowing water means એક ધારું પાણી એક જગ્યાએ રહેતું નથી. It's not stagnant. Just opposite to lentic is lotic, right? So lotic is faster moving water system, and it એના examples આપણે કયા કયા આપી શકીએ? Springs છે, right? Streams છે, that means નાના ઝરણાઓ છે, અથવા તો when there is a waterfall, right? Or the flowing water of the river. Why we call it flowing water of the river? Because the river water is never stagnant. The water content that is there right now, after 2 minutes the content of water would be different, because it is a flowing water, and flowing water has its own characteristic and its own habitation. Habitation એટલે જે પ્રાણી, જે creatures આ જગ્યાએ રહી શકે એને હેબિટેટ કહેવાય, right? The person or maybe the creature who finds their living in a particular region is said to be habitat, right? Or habitation. That means what we have seen up till now, we have checked out that there are two types of ecosystem, or that aquatic ecosystem can be divided into two. Marine ecosystem, marine એટલે sea, ocean water છે એને marine ecosystem કહેવાય. Why it is marine? Because, and it is different because it has got salt compounds in it. Sodium and chlorine નું proportion વધારે હોય છે. And the next ecosystem, that is a major aquatic ecosystem, is considered to be freshwater. Freshwater ની ખાસિયત એ છે કે generally this water is not containing the amount of sodium, or it is not containing that much amount of sodium which is available in the marine ecosystem. That is why it is considered to be freshwater ecosystem. Now these freshwater ecosystem can be further divided into lentic, lotic and wetlands, right? And lentic is what? Lentic is considered to be the stagnant water. Stagnant water એટલે સ્થિર પાણી. અહીંયા પાણી બહુ ફરતું નથી, બદલાતું નથી, right? It's a stagnant water. સ્થિર હોય છે એવું. એના examples કયા આપી શકાય? If you just think, it is very simple to understand and quote an example there. That means the lakes, or you can consider as the pools, maybe ponds. You must have noticed that the water that comes in this particular bodies, that means lakes, pools and ponds, they are stagnant in nature. They generally do not flow. Once it is filled up, the pond is filled up, or maybe the lake is filled up, it remains almost all throughout the year, or maybe after rainy season during the summer it may dry up. Again when there is rainfall, the lakes or pools may be filled up again with the water. That means more or less it is a stagnant water, and that is why it is known as lentic. Lotic has its own characteristic, fast moving water is considered to be lotic. What can be the example there? It may be springs, it may be streams, it may be rivers. This we have noticed that whenever we watch the river water, we never get to see it stagnant. It keeps on flowing. It depends on the flow. Some rivers may have the fast flow, the others may be having the slow flow. Why it is so? Because the water keeps on moving, right? And that is why we are going to learn here the streams and rivers in detail as an example. So let us study first the lentic type. What is the lentic type? Lentic means stagnant, as I said, right? So pond is the ecosystem that we will be learning here. Ponds are small bodies of fresh water with shallow and still water. Still water means that does not change. Marsh and aquatic plants. Marsh is a kind of say plants that grow in such a kind of region, right? The size and depth of ponds often varies means differ greatly with the time of year. Many ponds are produced by the spring flooding from the rivers. Ponds get to filled up by the river water, or maybe the rainwater, or maybe the springs flowing, or the springs falling on them, and they may be carrying the pond. The size and depth depends upon the quantity of water that it can hold. There is usually a diverse range of aquatic life, with a few examples including algae, snail, fish, beetles, water bugs, frogs, turtles. These are the general types of creatures that are found in ponds. Top predators may include large fish, herons, or alligators. That predators means the animals who say depend on the other animals, as we call it carnivorous, right? Carnivorous animals are such who depends on the other animals. Same way predators are such who needs the prey, એટલે શિકાર કરી અને પછી ખાય છે, એને predators કહેવાય. તો large fish, alligators, herons are such kind of animals which are generally found in the pond ecosystem. It is the simplest form. See, pond is the simplest ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem, because it is small in nature and it has its own world, it has its own ecosystem in which such kind of creatures may survive. It is quiet body of water and usually has a muddy or salty bottom with aquatic plants around the edges. That means it is muddy in nature, it has got salty bottom. That means at the bottom of the pond you may find a little bit of salt, or maybe the proportion of salt is present, and on the edges you may get to see different plants growing. Pond is temporary and has water only in monsoon, and lake is an aquatic ecosystem having water throughout the year. That is the basic difference. What happens is pond may be temporary in nature. That means for a few months only you get to see pond. Say during the monsoon season, if the pit of the ground may be filled up with water, then we call it pond, right? And it dries up soon. Just immediately after the monsoon season it dries up, and that is almost the pond. Whereas the lake is a bigger system and it is throughout the year, almost it remains throughout the year. Once the monsoon rain is getting its water content, or from the monsoon rain it gets its water content, almost lake can survive, or lake can be seen throughout the year. Most pond becomes dry after rainy season, as I told you, and for the remaining part of the year they are covered with the terrestrial plants. Even you can see it in a general also, that maybe the pit near your house, or maybe on the way of your or in the outskirts of a city, you get to see the ponds. That means once there is a heavy rainfall, the pit may be filled up with the water and it turns up into pond, but not for a major period of the year. Just immediately after monsoon season, it gets dried up very soon, and then within short period of time, 1 to 2 months, you can see the terrestrial plants growing on them. That is why pond is the simplest system. It is temporary in nature, and it is the lentic ecosystem. It's a example of lentic ecosystem, right? Now we will study the lotic ecosystem. Lotic and what goes with it. Lotic means the lotic ecosystem is what that denotes the water flowing. That means flowing water system is considered to be lotic in nature, like streams or rivers, right? Here let us see it. Ponds are the small bodies of fresh water with shallow and still water, marsh, right? This is about the lentic we have seen. We are going to study about the streams and rivers. So it is a flowing water ecosystem, we know this. Snails and burrowing animals of specific types can live in the flow of the hill streams. We must have seen snails living there. Burrowing animals means who burrows or who digs the land and tries to live there. Such kind of animals are found in such a kind of running water ecosystem. Very pure and clean water is must for few habitants, which is found here. That means few habitants. Habitants means few animals, few creatures are such who requires fresh water all the time, and such habitats can be found out here in this ecosystem. Next, faster moving unstable water typically contains greater concentration of dissolved oxygen, which supports the greater biodiversity than the slow moving water of the pools. This is very important point, because the water flows here in this lotic system the water flows, and that is why what happens is that there is good proportion of dissolved oxygen that supports a good amount of biodiversity. That means a large amount of biodiversity can be seen in the fresh moving or freshwater system, that means lotic ecosystem rather than lentic, because in the pools the water gets stagnant, the amount of the proportion of oxygen is limited at that time, and that is why all the you cannot see, in short, all the type of biodiversity there. That means so many creatures living in pond cannot be seen, but yes, in freshwater it supports so many types of creatures who needs the oxygen continuously. Thus, environmental threats to the rivers include, we need to understand this, that a heavy biodiversity lives here. That means a large amount of creature lives in the river or flowing water, and at that time if we are creating or we are endangering it, then it is a real threat not only to the rivers but to the biodiversity, or maybe to all the types of animals and creatures living in such kind of freshwater system. So environmental threats to the rivers include loss of water when they dry up, the building of dams, maybe the chemical pollution and introduction of new species. Right? Now these may create the imbalance in the river water system. A dam produces negative effect that continues down the dividing water flow. That means if you are creating the dam, it's somewhere you bifurcate or you may channelize the flow of water, and that may be artificial in nature, and that may affect the creatures living within it, because it's a flowing water system. And if you try to just say somewhere you are trying to control the flow of water, or when you are trying to artificially throw the water, or say you want to just make the flow of water fast, these may create lot many problems for the creatures living within it. The most important negative effect are the reduction of springs flooding, which damages the wetlands. That means once you are trying to hold the water through dams, what happens because of them? The wetlands, that means je bhejwado area છે, wetlands are all those all those areas which contains a good amount of moisture, એને પણ affect થાય છે, અને આવી સિસ્ટમ છે એ જે biodiversity which lives in the freshwater system gets disturbed. So any human activity in this particular area, that means to the lotic ecosystem, that is streams and rivers, it creates a lot many problems to the creatures. Here we are talking about the third category. See what we have seen. We have seen the lentic ecosystem, that is pond and lakes. We have seen lotic, that is streams and rivers, and now we are moving towards wetlands. Wetlands is the area where the soil is saturated or swamped for at least part of the time. There is fluctuation of water level in the different seasons. Wetlands, the name itself tells you, wet etle ભીનું, and the land which consists of good amount of moisture, and a saturated soil હોય, soil એકદમ hold વાળી હોય, and or it's full of moisture, then for few habitation it is very good to have these wetlands. It can be a part of lentic system as they form naturally along the most lake shore. You must have seen on the surrounding of the lake, or maybe the surrounding of the pond, they automatically gets turned up into wetlands. Often dead trees or log gets transported to site during the floods. That means these wetlands, in these wetlands you get to see the dead trees, you get to see the logs means the wood that travels because of the floods. This debris, that means remains, provides important living to the fish. We may find it that this has got nothing to do or it is useless, but in nature nothing is useless. Somewhere or the other, one or the other creatures find its living in this. Same way in such a kind of wetland or within this debris or remains, few fishes can survive, even the nesting birds can have its nest, and also it protects the shoreline from erosion. That means એ કિનારા ઉપર soil erosion થાય છે. soil erosion એટલે સે માટી છે એ ધોવાઈ જાય છે, એ વસ્તુ આ વેટલેન્ડમાં નથી થતી, because it holds a good amount of moisture. Wetlands are the most productive natural ecosystem Natural ecosystem in the world because of the closeness of water and the soil, because it's the most productive. Why wetlands are most productive? Because it has a good amount of water automatically, that means naturally it holds the water, and it is very good for the cultivation of so many things. Hence they support large number of plant and animal species. Even the many animals like worms get to this is just an example, so many organisms can have its living in these wetlands, plus they are very beneficial for the plants to be grown. So these are the three types of fresh aquatic system. I repeat, aquatic system means the water bodies. It can be ecosystem. The aquatic ecosystem can be divided into two parts: marine ecosystem consisting of seas and ocean, right? Whereas the freshwater system, which consists of lentic, means the flow of water, where the flow of water is not there, it is stagnant, like pools, ponds and lakes. Whereas lotic means wherein the bodies have the fresh flow of water throughout, right? That means the rivers and the streams. And on the other hand, the third one is said to be the wetlands, means it is such a kind of area of land where the moisture is much, where the water proportion can be seen, and it can be found out on the shores of like kinara, on the shores of lakes or maybe ponds, and it's very good for the plants and many animal species. So this is about the wetland. Let us go ahead. Due to their productivity, now what happens, as we told, that it is very fertile in nature. Wetlands are often converted into dry, means it is converted, it is made dry and then used for agricultural purpose, because it is very productive in nature. Many minerals get settled down in this wetlands, and so it may be very helpful for the agriculture of so many crops, right? Next comes up is the construction of dam has negative consequences. That means result for the individual wetland and entire watershed at times. See, we start constructing the dam for many various purposes, right? But most of the time it may be beneficial to the human beings, but it may not be that good for the nature. So same thing has been explained here. Their closeness to lakes and rivers means that they are often developed for the human settlement, because it is on the shore, it is wherever we get easy living, there the habitat or human settlement is very much popular. It can be seen, you must have noticed this, that since the civilization આદિમાનવ કાળથી જ્યાં જ્યાં પાણીની વ્યવસ્થા માણસને મળી છે ત્યાં એ સેટલ થતું જાય છે. સેમ થિંગ ઇઝ અવેલેબલ હિયર, દેટ એગ્રીકલ્ચર ઇઝ easy. You can get to see so many other creatures also, and because of that the human settlement is very common on the wetlands. Once the settlement are constructed and protected by dikes, the settlement then becomes weak to lend subsidence. That means it's a gradual settling or sudden sinking of the earth's surface, and even increasing the risk of flooding. Now what happens, because of such wetlands already it consists of so much of moisture, and if people start constructing some or the other thing here, what happens is it sinks, the land it sinks because of the moisture, it sinks, it goes down, the level of the land goes down, and it is prone to earthquakes, because already the mud it is moisturous in nature and it is soft in nature, it's not hard, and that is why it becomes very prone to say maybe the earth getting sinked, or maybe the risk of flood is more here, because the water content is already there, and if there is occurrence of flood, then it will catch more amount of water. So this is the whole nature of the wetland. Now what we are going to do is we are going to study three things: use of aquatic system, threats to aquatic system, as well as the protection to aquatic system, right? When we are talking about use of aquatic system with so much of explanation, I think it should be simple enough. It is very important for getting fresh water, we already know this. There is greater economic importance as wetlands for shells, grass and other plantation. This type of land is required. It is a major source of livelihood for many people, like fishermen, right? And most of them survive on this aquatic system. The water available supports not only us but the agriculture and industrial requirement also. Even the electricity can be generated out of it with the help of hydropower plants. It also helps to recycle nutrients, purify water, calm flood situation, helps to recharge the groundwater, and most importantly provide habitats for the wildlife. That means whosoever is living on the earth's surface, without aquatic system, none of us can survive, and it's of great help. Just imagine the world without aquatic ecosystem, it's not possible to survive. So many uses are there, we have quoted just few of them. Aquatic ecosystem are also used for human recreation and are very important to the tourism industry, especially in the coastal region. Not only just providing the lifeline to the wild animals or to the human beings, it is also very important source of earning or livelihood for the people living on the coastal region, because they can turn up this into a tourist center and they can earn money out of it. So for human recreation also such kind of aquatic system can be used. Now we are focusing on threats. Threats means what type of threats are created to the ecosystem. Threats means by kai rite we are creating the aquatic imbalance, or we are creating kind of threats to this system. The water pollution is the biggest threat we know, occurring because of the improper waste management and lack of sewage facilities in the urban areas. This is very common factor. Again, the sewage means the drainage facility. Purification damages the water life, though in some of the industries it is made compulsory that before throwing or before discharging this water, the impurities into the water, it has to be recycled or it has to be purified. But even then it creates a lot many problem for water life, because the amount of oxygen level already reduces, and this harms the survival of aquatic animals. Even the bad smell produced disturbs the flora and fauna of the surrounding area. If the water discharge is there in the water bodies, right, impurities are being discharged, what happens? It creates a kind of the bad odor, and that may be very harmful to the flora. Flora means all the plantations, all the plants, and fauna means all the animals or creatures living in that area. It may be very harmful to them. One of the consequences means result of damming is the prevention of the fish migration for the reproduction, feeding or other purposes. Even at the time of constructions of dams or other projects on the rivers or maybe on water bodies, what happens is the fish cannot move or cannot migrate for say reproduction or for feeding purpose or for any other reason. It may not be able to migrate, and somewhere we are constraining it, we are trying to limit the life of these creatures. Agricultural irrigation schemes can lead to salination, that means process by which the water soluble salts accumulate in the soil. Even the agricultural irrigation that we take up or different types of streams we take up, that leads to more amount of soil that gets accumulated, which may not be good for all the habitats, and it may decline the or it may lead to the death of all those species who cannot tolerate such type of too much of salt. And that is how we are creating. These are again, I am telling you, these are again the few points that creates the threat to the aquatic ecosystem. Right? Let us see further. Heavy industrialization leads to too much of chemical disposal in the water bodies. We know this. Again, the use of pesticides, fertilizers also leads to killing of the aquatic animals. Freshwater fishes are often the most accessible resources as food. Overfishing poses a serious threat to the fish and aquatic biodiversity. Pesticides are released, right? Industrial waste is released. Again, the freshwater fishes is the best resource of food. Seafood is fish, right? And but overfishing leads to the less population or maybe the lower population of such kind of fish, and maybe more number of biodiversity, aquatic biodiversity. It produces heavy toxic chemical pollution, which is very threatening to the major species in the water. That means we think that we are disposing it outside, but we have learnt in the earlier part of the chapter that the earth is closed system. Nothing can be thrown out of it. Everything remains in one or the other form in the earth. So whatever disposals we are making, whatever chemical disposals we are making in the water, it creates a great threat. It is એટલું બધું ભયજનક છે કોના માટે? જે સ્પીસીસ વોટરની અંદર રહે છે. A stress on an aquatic ecosystem can be result of physical, chemical or biological alterations of the environment. Naturally જે પણ આપણે alteration environmentની સાથે, જે પણ changes environment સાથે કરીએ છીએ, say talking about the aquatic environment only. તો એ ફિઝિકલ પણ હોઈ શકે બાય કન્સ્ટ્રક્ટિંગ ધ ડેમ, કેમિકલ્સ પણ હોઈ શકે લાઈક થ્રોઈંગ ધ ઓર મે બી ડિસ્ચાર્જિંગ ધ કેમિકલ remainings of the industries or any other purpose, or it may be biological, wherever we are trying to just create imbalance in the ecosystem that affects the aquatic ecosystem. So these are the threats that we have seen. Then how can we protect it? That is very important. This portion is very important because we must take care as laymen also. We must take care that we are not disturbing the aquatic ecosystem, because 97% of the water is marine water. Only 3% of the fresh water we have it on the earth, which gets recycled and we can use it in one or the other way. So we must protect the aquatic ecosystem. Water pollution can be prevented, we know this, by constructing the dams across the river. The running water is changed to static water, which does not allow the species to live. We have seen that so many species are such which lives only in the fresh water. એને તમે સ્ટેગ્નન્ટ વોટરમાં રાખો તો એ લોકો એ ક્રીચર્સ ન સર્વાઈવ કરી શકે. તો આપણે એ ન કરવું જોઈએ. નેશનલ પાર્ક અને વાઇલ્ડ લાઈફ સેન્ચ્યુરીઝ ડેવલપ થવી જોઈએ, જેમાં આ આખી નેચરલ જે કુદરતી સંપત્તિ છે, જે ધરોહર છે, એને આપણે સાચવી શકીએ. રાઈટ, બાય એડ્યુકેટિંગ પીપલ. As right now what we are doing, we are trying to educate ourselves with the effects of destroying the ecosystem by creating the awareness. We are trying to create awareness as to what steps should be taken to just protect our aquatic ecosystem also and terrestrial ecosystem also. That is exactly what we are doing by developing such projects led by government for cleaning up the lakes. Many times you may have heard that it is the government who is taking the initiatives to maybe clean up the rivers, maybe the lakes. Then that should be supported so that ultimately the ecosystem can be balanced. Also, new strategies to counter threats posed by human activities can be built up. That means new strategies, new plans should be there wherever we are trying to create any kind of threats to the human through human activities. That should be stopped somewhere, and we should take care that the counterpart is not getting affected much. So these are the protections that we should take so that we can actually save our aquatic ecosystem. We are ending up here with the part 9. Right, what we have studied here is we have totally focused on aquatic ecosystem. I'll just refresh it one more time. Aquatic ecosystem can be divided into two parts: marine ecosystem and freshwater ecosystem. Marine consists of seas and ocean, and it has a large amount of sodium and chlorine in it, and that what makes it different from the rest of them. And the other one is freshwater system. Freshwater system can be divided into three parts: lentic, lotic, and it may be the wetlands. Right, lentic is anything that is stagnant like pond. Lotic means which tells us about the characteristic of flowing water like rivers and streams. And wetlands are all those types of lands which consists of good amount of moisture and water, and they are generally found on the shores of lakes, ponds, or maybe the sea. Right, so these are the three bifurcations that we have seen. We have also tried to study that what type of usage of such kind of ecosystem is. Aquatic ecosystem has its own set of use. Right, number 2, we are creating threats. There are so many threats now. When we say that we are polluting it, there is climatic change and all those stuff, that means we are creating a kind of problems to these ecosystem. That also we have studied, and how we can protect. That means ultimately what we should do to protect this aquatic ecosystem, those points have also been mentioned. Right, so in short, we are going to complete this A portion here. A portion of your unit 1 is getting over here. From the next lecture onwards, we will be continuing with the B part of this particular unit. By the time we meet next, it's goodbye from my side. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.